It is burning up. Uh-oh. There it goes. All right. Hmm. I'm uploading some things. I might have to stop it. Let me see.
See how we go.
Oh, maybe not. And edit. God, I just ran into town and ran back and like sweating like a dog. Oh,
Next time, just use teleportation. It's quicker.
I'm I'm getting there. I've about had it with this. Okay, there I tagged you. Okay, sound off.
Works for some things, maybe, and not everything yet.
God, it needs to hurry up. Although I'm happy with the regeneration that seems to be occurring, the higher sensitivities.
Hmm.
Let me pull up YouTube. Um, okay, yeah. All right. God, I'm tripping. So, all right, here we go. Okay. Soul Ghost Hunters radio show. This is about our sixth or seventh episode with Liara Covert. And welcome, everybody. We're getting a lot of good responses about this. It's a little bit different, but it's starting to get some traction. And yeah, I'm anxious to see what the viewers have sent in to you, and we're going to talk movies or books or ghost or life or whatever it is. But yeah, welcome back, and let's rock and roll.
Fabulous. Great to see you, Todd. And thanks to all our listeners and viewers for joining us again. We love the feedback we're getting, and I am really excited about the movies that we're going to cover tonight in the show or this morning, depending on where you are. Today's theme is the idea of the age of knowing what everyone is feeling. Just imagine the transparency and how that plays out. Now, ghosts, as we've explored before, tend to play on the idea that something warrants fear. But what if we turn this whole thing around? We've talked about inversion before, and I'd like to start today's show with a story because this is a new trend we have. And today's story is about three monks, and they're washing bowls at the side of a river. And the first monk stands up and says, "Oh, I forgot to do the laundry." And he runs across the water to the other side of the river to hang the laundry and then runs back. And a few minutes later, the second monk stands up and said, "Oh, I forgot the spoons." And he runs across the water and he grabs the spoons at the hut and he comes back. All the while, the third monk is dumbfounded and he feels that if the other two monks can walk on water, then of course he ought to be able to walk on water too. But try as he might, each time he attempts to run across the river, he falls in the water. He's quite frustrated. And the other two monks, they look at each other and telepathically say, "Ought we tell him where the stepping stones are?" And the thing is that the theme of walking on water recurs in movies and it relates to books as well. And many people have talked to me about the idea of Jesus walking on water and the symbolism of this. But one of the movies that was recommended to look at this week was Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Walking. Um, it was 2017. Did you see that one, Todd? Oh,
I
Dead Men
don't.
Tell No Tales is what I mean.
Yeah, I don't. I think what's that? There's like two or three of them, right? Two or three Pirates of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw the first one, but no, I haven't. I haven't seen this one. No.
Well, in that particular movie, there is this scene where the undead pirates walk on water. And of course, there's the reference to Jesus. There's reference to the idea of another movie called Remo Williams in 1985, where it's actually a guru who runs across the water. Do you know that one?
I think so. I think that was with Fred Ward. I think.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I do remember, vaguely remember that. Yeah. but I don't remember the walking on water scene.
Well, the whole idea of walking on water is sort of a phenomenon that we get mixed messages about. You know, in Pirates of the Caribbean, it's these undead pirates who are coming people, and they're very scary looking, and they're not something that many people want to wrap their arms around and embrace. They want to run. Whereas in when it comes to someone like Jesus or in Remo Williams, you have characters that are more spiritual, like they're um, they have an essence about them that draws us to them. We don't want to run. We feel like we can relate to them in some way. So it's an interesting contrast that I would like people to sort of reflect on, because walking on water is something you hear about in the Bible as well. Um, and it's something that many people assume, well, only certain people can do. You know, it's this rare phenomenon. It's not something everyone can do. But if we reflect on sort of the symbolism of ghosts, ghosts are something that we tell ourselves are scary, something that we don't want to get close to. We feel alienated about. And if we think about spiritual attainment, the idea of getting in touch with who we truly are, um, we don't have need for displays like that. It's the ego that wants us to think we can do something that someone else can't do. So there are many different metaphors that might come out here. Do you relate to any of that, Todd? Or when you hear about walking on water, do you think of ghosts?
Well, no, I think you bring up a good point. Like the last part where you said, things that the ego says things we can do that others can't, but also things that the ego thinks others can and we can't. But also, if you look at the attributes of ghost, let me just take it further and another label, which we could say are ghosts for those of us who have had encounters of that nature, of the paranormal nature with apparitions, etc. Either way, uh, if you look at the characteristics, the angels and the demons share certain characteristics. The light and the dark share certain characteristics. And one of those might be something like walking on water. Yeah.
Hmm. That's something to reflect on, because you know we see walking on water, many people are taught to see that it is a divine trait that only certain people can do. And ghosts are, again, something that isn't us. It perpetuates this idea of separation, us and them. And the more we explore these themes in movies, books, popular culture, in our own lives, the more we begin to close the gap, that gap, that illusion of separation, that we relate to these things and we're starting to see more of ourselves in them. And a great example is another film that we're asked to explore, Doctor Strange from 2016. Did you ever see that one?
I haven't seen that. I love that actor. I've watched several of his other movies, but I've never seen that movie.
Mm, highly recommended. I love the special effects. Marvel Comics, you know, is full of interesting concepts and ideas. But one of the things that Doctor Strange says is, after he loses the ability to be the surgeon, you know, his hands are damaged in an accident. He says there's no such thing as spirit. You know, he's the epitome of someone who is the naysayer. You know, he doesn't believe in the afterlife. He doesn't believe in anything that he can't logically explain. And that's the scientist in him. And what happens is, if we reflect on the ghost theme in that film, you don't necessarily see literal apparitions, as in the transparent entities of some movies, but you see the spiritual and the astral realm that is explored through the powers that he develops. He learns to see beyond the physical and to accept that more exists to reality than he's taught. And he has a teacher, and there are many interesting experiences that he has. I don't want to give everything away about the movie, but it brings up the themes of belief and faith. And when it comes to ghosts and spirit, again, you have these recurrent themes. Strange overcomes his initial um, obstacles in his mind a skepticism to embrace that there's more to life than he's been taught. Can you relate to that theme at all, Todd?
Yes, I can. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about it's almost like from the human part of us that we can accept the ghostliness within ourselves. And what I'm talking about is the dark part, the part that we associate with the scary, the fearful, and that we can relate to that, and that somehow or another we are disconnected or not able to connect to the light part, the walking on water, the light, basically. So it's interesting because, coming from the human perspective, which is one of a limited perception of ourselves, apparently, as we go through this expansion in the collective consciousness and within ourselves, how we have accepted the dark, even though we don't want it. And even though that's not the place we look, we seem to identify with that more than we have with the light side of things. And yet they are one and the same thing.
Mm. Yes, you highlight a very interesting point. Just the charge or the intensity of dark or negative or heavy experiences tends to sit with us and be more noticeable than the lighter, uplifting experiences. And I love how Dr. Strange invites us to transcend our own limits. The physical limits that we create for ourselves can be overcome by altering our perception, by shifting our beliefs, by tuning into what we don't always understand, be it electricity or other kinds of energy that we use on a regular basis. We don't have to know how they work to witness or experience it on some level. And although another message that Dr. Strange exhibits is this idea of sacrifice. You have to give something up, something you feel is important to you in order to grow, in order to expand into that unknown. And for him, it's his hands, it's his ability to operate, which is the epitome of his ego and his arrogance initially. But there are other things that he gets to explore as the result of giving up those things.
Mm, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, if you look at his hands as something that he can easily, accept and acclimate what he can do with his hands, um, it's his light. And so his light gets taken away. So then he can explore his darkness, which brings him an even greater sense of knowing or being, skills, abilities, sensitivities. But he would not have gone there had that, quote unquote, light uh, been taken away from him.
And he's able to use his hands in a different way, an unexpected way, for the greater good, not simply to nourish his own ego, which
Mm.
originally is what drives him. But of course, there are many other themes. These are just a few of the themes that I'm drawing attention to today. And it's a great stepping stone to a book that many people would like to see made into a movie called The Secret Life of Billy Fingers. Do you know that book or have you heard of that?
Oh, I just got big chills. Yeah. So, my first 2 years in my reawakening, as I call it, I chose to go live on the streets. And I was, like many of us in our reawakening, we didn't know there were others like us. So after a couple of years, I came off the streets and got a laptop and I started doing my work, with the laptop as opposed to a flip phone. And that book was the first impact on me that somebody that I wasn't crazy. Now his sister Ann Kagan wrote the book. I think she's a psychologist. He started
Yes.
talking to her after he passed at a young age, and she was kind of an academic, and it changed everything with her. It was fascinating to me. Many of the quotes from that book I spread through social media for a long time. Things as simple as if people knew, from where I'm looking at, if people knew all the energies around them, the ghosts, and the angels, or the devils and the angels, or the dark and the light, they would realize that a lot of what they're doing from the human perception isn't even by their choice. It's by the
Mm,
influences of these things outside of themselves, which as time went on, I began to understand were really extensions of me, or extensions of the person, trying to speak to the person. Yeah. So that book to me, I never thought of that, but it should be made into a movie because of all books that I've read that have been made into movies, there's so many of them, Path of the Peaceful Warrior, Celestine Prophecy. There's just so many of them. But this one is a very personal journey shared with somebody who's still incarnated and that has that love bond. And so therefore, you have this polarity, this contrast of the sister who is an academic, I think, believes she was a psychologist, and her brother who was a bit like me. I think he was kind of wild. And the fact the fact that she took that information in and within herself, and then on top of that was able to actually share it out real time. That book's still getting a lot of traction and a lot of mileage, and I believe it's because of that mix of the human and the once human.
mm. I resonate with the story you share, and it's fascinating to me how Billy Fingers is like the manifestation of the afterlife. And there are so many people who contemplate what if, is there something after where we are now? And when we explored the whole idea of inversion and how as a human you're taught to focus on the next thing, what may be coming next, heaven, hell, whatever it happens to be, it distracts us from the grounding aspect. And to me, this book offers both perspectives. So depending on where you are in your journey of consciousness, that determines your focus. Do you see it more as a book that's grounding Annie, for example, in her world of logic and rational thinking and linking the spiritual, finding the bridge? Or are you simply focusing on where Billy might be and where you'd like to go after? It doesn't matter. There's something in the book for everyone, and it would be wonderful for that to transform into a movie. We'll see. We'll have
Well,
to
it,
wait and see.
it resonates a lot of truth, and I think it there's so many things. I've always understood that there's multiple purposes and multiple meanings to everything, and you might call that multidimensionality. But the polarity of his sister's views, earthly views, his
Mhm.
own earthly views and existence and hers, and then to have that fusion and collaboration of what became the book and her Facebook site and the early memes that she would send out with the quotes from the book. I mean, it's yes, I can see where it addresses both the where do we go from here, but in terms of if you really think about her book, I've never thought about this before, but we all have received in our own ways, downloads, or you can call them channelings or transmissions, experiences that are of the other side, you might say, and they do ground us. But there's a mix here. There's a message here that I see, like with her evolution, which still is filled with some doubt and some mistrust of, am I really getting this? Even though it's my brother
Yeah.
sending me these messages, but at the same time to report that quote unquote supernatural experience or download or whatever, which you've seen many people do since about the time she put that book out, which was around 2012, 2013. So yeah, there's a tremendous amount of stuff that you could dig into there, both with her individually, him individually, through his words that she's transmitted, but really, it was a big download for her. And I've always understood too that whatever we receive is meant for us first and foremost. And if we can share it, then that's great. And that's what I think this is a great example of.
Mm, very much so. And the fact that she did find the courage within herself to share it is a huge step because she might contemplate for many years to come, is it him? Is it my mind? What's going on? But when she takes the next step to share it with the world, that is service. That is the idea of offering seeds to people and allowing those seeds to plant themselves where they will. I love the next one, especially because I can really relate to it also. I suppose I can relate to them all, but this one's called Flatliners. There were two movies made, one in 1990 and one in 2017. Have you heard of that, Todd?
I saw the
Flatliners?
yeah, I saw the one in 1990. I believe it was Julia Roberts was in it, I think, or Kevin Bacon may have been. Maybe I got that part confused, but it was where they were basically, you can look at it two different ways. Basically, entering the other side or the afterlife, and they were um, basically going into death, what we would define as death. They were flatlining, and then sharing and recording those experiences that they had, and from there, it just kind of grew. Oh
Mm,
yeah, I remember that. That's a good example too. I'm surprised that yeah, there's still a ghost element to it. I mean, what more can be a ghost element than the conception of death?
yes, and the magic of five. There were five medical students who got involved in this, and there's an interesting comparison or contrast you can make between the two movies. In both cases, the medical students decided to explore death, if you will. They wanted to discover what may be after this particular world and bring back some insight. But in the first movie, the first movie when they came back, they each individual was sort of forced to look at or revisit their version of a sin or some wrongdoing that they had done in their lives, and work with emotions like guilt and shame in order to find peace within themselves. So it was like a life review that we've heard about in other stories and movies. And in the 2017 version, it was more about the horror, the idea of bringing something back that's unwanted, possession, making reference to The Exorcist and some of these other movies. So the ghost is something that we don't want rather than something we do. But there's this tug of war that goes on within us about ghost and spirit. Is there something, some gem of wisdom here for us that we can benefit from, grow from, expand from, catapult through to transcend it? Or is this something that we want to resist? Can you relate to any of those themes? Is there anything else that stands out for you?
Yeah, I look at what you just said about the five medical students, and they come back and start to look at shame and blame and externalization, and it sounds like a lot of sounds like a lot of what a lot of people have been doing since 2012, give or take. This
Mm,
is, you might even say, and I know these words lose their meaning, but the connotation of ascension. So I look at that. And then the other thing I look at too is, having done so many shows over the years and many people that I've talked to, and myself too, twice, having NDEs or out of body experiences, very much the same. They go into that flat line and they receive a certain amount of awareness. It's embodied with them. They come back, and then their whole life is reevaluated. And I think the third point is that, to me, I understand that this is what these extraordinary times that we're in. We are in a physical life review. So, in other words, we're no longer leaving the body to receive the code and information that many people do in a near death experience or an out of body experience. And the difference being that when we go to the other side, and let's just say we've disincarnated, we can't apply in the physical density experiential that we have come from because we're no longer there. But we now can receive this information and actually apply it and actualize it in the moment and carry it with us. So for me, that's an extraordinary observation. And as you know, and I think as we're finding out as time goes on, Um, it's the awareness now, the gap between awareness and functionality, you might say, or manifestation is minimizing to the point where it's almost becoming instantaneous. And I assume it virtually will.
Mm. Yes, we're closing that gap, aren't we,
Mm,
between time and no time. And people will say that, they're fighting their demons, when really what's actually happening is they're fighting the consequences of their
mm,
own decisions. This is something that sort of comes to light. And in the 1990 version, for me, what stands out is it's sort of like a DMT allegory, or
mm,
in my memoir, I talk about 5 different plant medicine experiences, and the idea that we can access information from our energy field. Um, well, we're still in the body. You don't have to go into the traditional afterlife like they do in the movie, where you have to stop your heart to get it. You're actually having near-death experiences far more frequently. But how you receive, decode, transmit information is changing. And even if you haven't had what people would traditionally describe as a near-death experience, another way to look at it is a near-life experience. And this
mm,
is something else that I explore, because if you look at ghosts, if we're surrounded by ghosts in the physical world, ghosts are those things that are symbols.
mm,
They're symbols that remind us of what we are forgetting about ourselves, who we
mm,
truly are.
mm,
And your life experience, if you look at the ghosts as stepping stones to truly living to our optimum existence, that means getting back in touch with true nature, doesn't it?
mm. Yeah. Yeah. And if you think about it, if you listen to the stories of people, and there's many on the internet now of near-death experiences, and I met Jesus, or I met Buddha, or I met my grandmother, or, somebody else, and they showed me this and showed me that. And what are they really showing you? What are they really showing that person? The ghost of themselves, right? It's I am my own ghost. I am a ghost. My ghost delivered to me this information, this data, this code. Um, and I think the other thing is too is the fact that we're sharing this information while we're still here. This part of us, this this fractal, within the fractal universe. We're a fractal of the universe, but yet we are fractalized. We know that we're conscious and living in other multidimensional landscapes, planetary, et cetera, dimensional timelines, whatever. But yet there's a reason that we're here rooted in this experience as a human being. And to, use the example, or really the allegory, I guess, of the ghost that we externalize so many different things, and the ghost has never been something that we are, but the truth is we are all of it. And so the ghost carries a tremendous amount of, kind of like the fool in the tarot deck, you know, because, the thing is, I love, speaking of movies, I love Guy Ritchie. I love his movies. I really do. And I watched him on a talk show one time, and he was talking about how every story is a hero's journey. Every single story is a hero's journey. So, how could you have a hero's journey without confronting the ghost, which we have externalized up to this point? Maybe you might put it that way. But now we're starting to understand that these ghosts are ourselves. And so we've set up our own hero's journey for our own soul's growth. And therefore the universe expands, we expand. A fascinating list of movies so far. So I'm ready to see what the next one is, because I never thought these were ghost stories.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because some of our listeners and viewers hadn't originally seen the movies they're suggesting as ghost stories, but as they're whole idea or perception of ghost changes, so does how they see their movies, and so does how they see themselves in the world. So I really love not knowing what's next too. But as for today's show, I have a bit of insight. um, One of the ones you mentioned in passing, Todd, is also mentioned, the Celestine Prophecy. Of course, the series of books by James Redfield is probably familiar to a lot of our listeners, but just the whole spiritual significance of synchronicity. And even as we're talking about different films and how we see ourselves, how that's changing, it's central to achieving human evolution in this series of books. And we can look at it in terms of ourselves as individuals, and we can also look at it in terms of the collective consciousness and how that is evolving. And there is this suggestion in the Celestine Prophecy, both movie and book, that there is this presence of spiritual beings, energy beings, and that the more we tune into that inner voice, our intuition, the more we are able to actually see things that we weren't able to see before. Can you relate to that movie?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that book. I read it when it came out. I think it was 1993, or maybe it
Mhm.
was before that.
And the movie
Yeah,
was
there's
2006.
yeah the movie I was less impressed with, but the books are always better for the most part. Anyway, but I
Mm,
remember when it first came out, and I thought, "What the hell is this?" Because I was going to bookstores a lot, and it was popular, and I read it, and it caught me from the very first scene, you know, and so there's an element of the ghost uh, in the collective flow, that synchronicity that you're talking about, a serendipity, timing and the grace of God, goddess, whatever you want to call it, that something is mysterious, something's out there, and it's not disconnected from you. It's not something that's outside of you. It's something that is connected to you at a minimum, and that in some weird way that the humans can't understand, or the human consciousness or the human perspective or cognitive ability can't understand, that it's both. So, to me, as we go down this road and talk about these books and these movies, understanding that, you know, even in the free will that we have, and that's even bigger than we understand, the ghost mechanism, the mysterious, it's beyond esoteric. This isn't about, some type of tradition or ritualistic tradition, or this is beyond that. This is beyond the human experience, something that we brought into us, that we've left these cookie crumbs out there so that we can reconnect with them, take the experience and go, oh, wow, put them together and create a whole new code, whole new experience, whole new universal, whatever you want to call it. The soul is, to me, like, having this conversation, it's coming online in a way that it never has, because it is accepting the ghost, in some kind of human soul fusion. But yeah, the decisions that we make don't just come from the human being, they come from the soul level first. And I
mm,
think that goes back to the Billy Fingers thing, goes back to near death experiences, and for myself, out of body experiences. Uh, some people call them walk-ins, but what is a walk-in? Are you not accepting a new ghost? Are you not releasing an old ghost? I know I had one at 37, and I had no idea what the mirror, the reflection, which was an angel at the time, was telling me. I had no idea what it was talking about, but I realized later that it was a death and it was a birth, and that my soul at some level had said, yeah, this was an exit point, and you would have become a ghost, and you did to some degree, because the old you died and the new you came in, and a new journey started. So ghost is we talked about this in one of the first shows, about how it's a residual energy, and it we die many times, and that's by our choice, you know?
That's right. We keep coming back for more, so we're enjoying the experience enormously, aren't we? I love in the Celestine prophecy how one of the ways you can look at it is sort of the fragmented psyche, because you have the protagonist who is following this path of insights and is getting glimpses of um, energy beings, energy fields, an energetic world. Even an analogy might even be a musical scale,
Mm,
moving based
mm,
on tones and notes, moving up a musical scale. And at the same time, the protagonist is being chased by um, forces that are unable to see what he's seeing, are unable to tune into the same frequencies. And it is simply a reflection on some level of ourselves. The part of us that relates to um, what we can see and what we know is real, and the part of us that isn't able to relate to those things.
yeah. So, I mean, there's elements here when you start to broaden the definition or the perception of ghost. Um, that, it's like you're talking about time travel. You're talking about moving up an octave. So if you've been working with do re fa sol la mi, whatever it's called, the musical scale, and you're in the third or the whatever it is range of that there comes these points in time, and some of them are very human, and some of them are not, like out of body experiences, like the one I was referring to that I had at 37. And you move up an octave. So not only do you move into another strata, but you move into another range of strata. Okay. And so, that's to me, that's the soul. To me, to at some point, if I look at what's happening on the earth right now with myself, with my friends, with what I'm experiencing in my work, we're making a choice to leave it all behind. And it's a bit difficult because it's not so much because we don't want to accept the ghost that we will be able to allow in and access, but it's more about the ghost that we don't want to let go of.
Mm,
And, when you think of ghosts, you think about, oh, I don't want to look at that, but it's what are the ghosts within yourself that you don't want to let go of? I might call them identities or being stuck on the grid, but it's the universal is not a stagnation type of energy. It's spiritual inertia. It's always moving forward. And it seems like in this experience that the human part of us is the last to find out and to accept it and assimilate it. But the bottom line is, what ghost do we have that we're not letting go of? Not in the sense of something outside of us that might harm us, but that, you know, why won't I let this go? Why won't I let the story go? Why do I have to understand? Because when you move into a new octave range, you let that you it's a prerequisite. It's like, you walk up to the two dragons in front of the Stargate and you have to give them the password. We must let it go. It's just evolution. It's not about need to, have to. It's just the way the universal works. So you can't miss a step on the soul highway.
mm. Beautiful analogy, Todd. In when you look at musical scales, in terms of gateways, you move from one note to another note, and only when you're able to vibrate at a certain frequency are you able to move through the next gateway, whatever that happens to be. And this is a wonderful precursor to a movie and a book that a number of people have asked me about this week, The Life of Pi. The Life of Pi is based on a bestseller by French Canadian Yann Martel. Are you familiar with that particular book or movie?
I haven't read the book or watched the movie, but I've seen enough of like previews to understand. Well, I think this is the one, right? Where is it a boy that's like traveling with an animal? I think, is it a tiger? Is that right? Yeah, and that alone, I should have watched it, but fill me in.
Not yet. You will. Uh, it's interesting because at the time that this movie came out, I was involved with in a work situation with the author's dad. So I sort of found out about the book when I was helping to promote it abroad. Um, but in essence, it's the story of our existence. And people at first glance will sort of look at it and say, well, where's the ghost in this? But again, we're looking with metaphors. We're viewing analogies on some level. And the story is this at the beginning, a family is moving from India to another location, and they used to have a zoo, so they're moving the animals with them, and they're in a ship and there's a storm. And of course, when we encounter a storm, obstacles present, don't they? And some of the animals are able to escape in a lifeboat with what turns out to be a boy. And the story is what happens on the open ocean with the boy and the animals, and which animal remains, which happens to be a tiger. So, can you imagine yourself in a boat with the tiger on the open
No,
ocean?
no, I cannot. No, I don't want to be on the menu.
No, well, it's a very challenging scenario to imagine because, it brings to the forefront many different themes, mortality being, at the forefront clearly. But if we look at the raft as a symbol, what is, a raft or a boat? It represents survival, doesn't it? It's faith in the unknown, where it's taking us. And we have to bring our ghosts and our demons with us wherever we go. This is fundamental. And when you are facing mortality, these are the sorts of things that arise. And I don't want to give too much away, but there are some fascinating uh, strategies, if you will, used by the director to create fantastic visual effects and encounters on the ocean. But you sort of are brought face to face with your concept of the divine, and what is God, what is spirit, what are the things you're willing to leave behind, which represent the ghosts, and what are you willing to embrace in terms of spirit. The tiger could be viewed as Pi's primal self, our basic instinct taking shape on this boat. And the two characters who remain have to find a way to handle each other, handle the situation, because if they want to survive, they need each other ultimately. And this is perhaps one of the most unfathomable kinds of scenarios that you could imagine. Uh, but somehow it happens and it works in the book and the movie.
So it's like the tiger realizes he can have his last meal or he could live perpetually if he collaborates and co-creates with the boy.
Well, there is this theory, when you look at cartoons, you're often given a blank cartoon bubble above an animal or an inanimate object and invited to reflect on what could this animal or object be thinking. And this is masterfully presented in the movie and the book, where we are invited to imagine what that animal is thinking, what the other animals are feeling when they're there
Mm,
as well.
mm.
And um, imagine that, you know, did they realize that, if they take certain actions, that's going to shorten their lifespan potentially? You have to imagine that there's a certain intelligence there. Um, uh, there was a recent movie that came out also that won Best Foreign Film. It's Latvian, and um, it's about a group of animals. There's no dialogue at all. It's animated. And essentially, this group of animals on a ship help each other to survive through a storm. And you watch the body language, you watch all of the silences, And the language that they use to communicate is phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like people come into the same, or well, characters, people come into the same band of frequencies. And if I think about what I referred to earlier, like my time in my dark night of the soul, if that's what you want to call it, those 2 years on the streets, or so many stories I've heard over the years with people on the show. Um, it's one thing to get into a situation or a mindset or an experience where you have nothing to lose. And so if I think about it, and I haven't seen the movie, I'm gonna have to go watch it. The ocean represents the universal, the unknown, the mother's
Hmm.
amniotic fluid, like if I fell off this raft, I don't know, it's a void, right?
Hmm.
So, what kind of stands out for me right now is the movie, even though I haven't seen it, now you have two. Before it was one. We all went through our dark nights of the soul alone. And that was it. It doesn't matter how many groups we were in, how many friends we had to handle this alone. And you get to a point where you're scared but fearless. And
Mm,
the thing I like about this movie outline is there's two. And I
mm,
feel like that there's a lot to be said for what's occurring on the earth now, um, in collaborations like this or so many others. Okay, because we've done this individually. We've done this individually probably for millennia. Okay, before we came into this game, this series of incarnations as a human experience or the human experiment, whatever it is, and the gold, the potential, the future, the potential new births, new universes, whatever. The prerequisite is you to do it with a mirror, to do it with a reflection, to do it with others, where two or more gather, and carrying the same mentality that, hey, we got nothing to lose. Let's charge the fucking hill. You know what I mean? Like, okay, let's go. It reminds me of a Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Robert Redford just
hmm.
transitioned, and
Yeah.
they're on that side of that mountain, and they're surrounded by the Mexican army or whatever, and there's nowhere to go. And he tells, who is it? It's Redford tells Newman, "Let's jump off this cliff into the river." And Newman says, "No." And finally, he gets to the point and says, "I don't know how to swim." And Redford starts laughing. I mean, they're about to die. And at ultimately Newman accepts it and they just jump off the cliff into the water and escape. But that's what I'm talking about. It's a point where we have reached as individuals many times prior to these incarnations on the earth, where we say, you know what, and we've done it here. I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to transform. I'm going to change. I'm going to fight. I'm going to push back. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to find my own power, whatever the case is. But now we're doing it with other people. And that is an exponential uh, potential of new growth, new universe, new birth. And so, yeah, I don't even know how I got there, but obviously this is part, this is part of it as we exchange these things and relate to each other, how we've related to ourselves.
Mm. And I also feel fundamentally that Life of Pi is also another stepping stone to our fundamental telepathic abilities, because it's one of these films where dialogue is no longer very important. It's body language, it's vibration, it's energy, it's uh, different kinds of gestures that are coming back into our scope of awareness and becoming more and more important to remind us of abilities that are innate, but we've forgotten. So that's something I'd like to highlight about that one. And another film I'd like to bring up, which relates to the 1990 Flatliners we mentioned earlier, is also a movie that came out in 1990. Edward Scissorhands. Do you remember that movie with Johnny Depp?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's Tim
this
Burton.
is a
That's Tim
classic.
Burton too, right? That's Tim Burton.
It It
Yeah.
is. It seems like Tim Burton keeps showing his head. Last week it was Nightmare Before Christmas. This week it's
Mhm.
Edward Scissorhands.
Mhm.
It's this whole idea of otherness, the ghost aspect of Edward Scissorhands in the film, his paleness, his darkness, the fact that he is shunned and judged and ridiculed is very much how we tend to alienate the concept of a ghost. So as a metaphor, he epitomizes everything we alienate in society that we demonize or um, look at as less than, less important, or um, worthy or unworthy of our attention. And it sort of invites us to reflect on societal norms, the status quo, the ghosts that we create, that we externalize, that we alienate, that we convince ourselves are separate from ourselves. So the ghost as being that which is we imagine as separate and that we don't want to see. He is very much an example of that for me. How do you see him, Todd?
Well, I mean, to me, I always found that movie fascinating. It reminds me of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and
Mm,
um, and then if you want to bring it into the contemporary, and again, I have to refer back to the work that I do and the thousands of shows I've done and talking to so many people. Um, the ghost was the part of us that we left behind when we try to fit in.
yes.
Because the ghost, which is really not a ghost, which is our true authentic self, tried to come out into the world and it didn't fit. So we ghosted it. We ghosted
Mm,
ourselves, right? And like Frankenstein in the old black and white movie, he didn't understand. He was a child. He didn't understand why people were trying to kill him and they were afraid of him. But,
mm,
if you look at many of our stories as we came out, again, 2012, give or take, for people, it's not a perfect science, but on the linear scale, but we tried to fit in. We tried to plug into the relationship. We tried to plug into society. We tried to be normal, and it killed us. And it
mm,
didn't kill the ghost in us because the ghost in us can never leave us, but
mm,
we had to ignore it, deny it, move away from it, and try to acclimate with this other thing that was alien and foreign. So, eventually, there's a point where there's a watershed moment, and I think if we look at this contemporary time, the difference is if we look past, into the past, witch trials or wherever you want to go, we gave up, we sacrificed, we suffered, whatever the case is. Now we're saying, hey, no, I am the ghost. I am Frankenstein. I am Edward Scissorhands. This is who I am. I am unique. I am a unique piece, an equal piece of the universal puzzle. The universal puzzle is not complete without me, and I am not complete without it. But in order for us to do this beyond ourselves, we do it with each other now. And so, yeah, I'm looking for the movie that comes out and says that.
Well, isn't it great that we can look at all of these different films and see what we're ready to see in them? I mean, Edward Scissorhands on some level is a journey to our own version of utopia, isn't he? He's a vehicle to explore our version of heaven. And as you point out, there are parts of us that initially we tell ourselves are not part of that, that we have to leave behind, that we have to see as separate or not worthy of being included. But it's that acceptance and the love beyond the superficial perceived differences that brings wholeness. And we have to find these things within ourselves. And although at the end of that particular movie, what happens is he's a bit disheartened, but he does see that achieving acceptance, love and acceptance universally is a challenge. This is one of the messages. It doesn't mean it's not possible.
Yeah.
It's simply one of those things that many of us work toward, and part of us is already there, and part of us is still catching up.
Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, this movie popped in my head. I don't know why. I have no idea why, but it has to do with the ending. And it was Peggy Sue got married with right? I think it's Nicolas Cage, or maybe it's not Nicolas Cage. It's some guy that's kind of like a James Dean character, rides a motorcycle, and she goes back in time or something like that. What's her name? Kathleen Turner, I think.
Yes.
But at the very end of the movie, she goes to because her grandfather, I think it's her grandfather, is kind of like her mentor guide. So again, metaphoric, and takes her to kind of like a Freemason type of meeting. And the revelation at the end is along the lines of that type of epiphany. Um, and again, we start talking ghost, and this was a few weeks ago, and really starting to understand that it's a much broader thing than we thought, to include time travel, to include what we might call the occult, but not in the sense that we thought, more in the sense of alchemy or magic. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. And I think we've been swimming in these waters for many, many, many millennia and many lives, specifically here in this series of incarnations on the earth.
Mm, so very true. And it's very much all about taking what we perceive to be negative qualities or traits and finding ways to transform them, finding ways to love, accept them, and see them as fundamental parts of ourselves, and taking these ghosts, transforming them into spirit, if this is how you choose to see it, and recognizing that they're simply another part of ourselves. This is what this journey is all about. And we can look at it in terms of movies, we can look at it in terms of books, or our own relationships in waking life in this incarnation. But the message that is guiding us to the universal is always there.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Well, and maybe what ends up happening, just as we start to understand that we have not gotten to know the dark, quote unquote, as we have the light, quote unquote, within ourselves from our perspective, and start to understand that they're all one and the same thing. And it's not some kind of like new age, not adage or something that sounds cool or makes a good meme. This is the real stuff. It's beyond shadow work. Shadow work is to discover things that maybe have led to the patterns of our behaviors, based on certain traumatic experiences. But beneath that, it's still the same thing. It's still something divinely orchestrated by ourselves, because how could we become and be and exemplify the hero's journey, which is really just an allegory of our expansion of our soul? And in order to do that, we have to have, well, we would have had to have the contrast of things that were, uh, you know, um, from our perception, alien to us or not of us. And then we come to the point where we discover that they are us, and we set the whole thing up, which just makes it like, okay, what's the next one going to be like? Maybe that's why there's going to be 1,000 years of metaphorical peace, so we can sit there and digest and integrate everything that we've actually created, and to some degree be impressed with ourselves. Like, oh my God, how are we going to fake ourselves out the next time? What kind of ghost are we going to create the next time? But the ghost is uh and to me, doing this series, it brings, and which life does. I mean, if you're paying attention, it brings a whole new perspective in the moment, changes everything, as our expansions do and our downloads and activations do. And I'm going to say a non-traditional sense, because it's the subtle triggers, it's the subtle activations, it's the subtle experiences of personal self-awareness, which affects the universal, see quantum entanglement, to the nth degree. And it's happening from the densest, most physical place we've ever endured. But there's no mistake in my mind that the connection is to all of our multidimensionality and our connectivity with each other, and obviously with all of our aspects. And to put it in human terms, the ghost is the ghost is us.
It certainly is. And just to come full circle from where we started on today's program, I mentioned that many people see that ghosts are those things that seem to warrant fear. But we are also inviting you to consider the possibility that ghosts are actually also something that warrants your love and acceptance, because that is really what brings the message home. And the age of knowing what other people are feeling begins with knowing what you're feeling yourself
Mhm.
and recognizing that everything is a mirror and that we're moving into an age of greater transparency, greater telepathic abilities, and many other dormant abilities that are coming online. And the more we love and accept ourselves, the greater access we have to these things that are just waiting for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, really, if you look at inner child, look at teenager self, you look at, 20 self, 30s, 40s, whatever, um, through this, just even this, this summary life, what do they really want? And that's not they, that's me, that's you, that's ourself. What do they really want? They just want to be seen. They just want to be treated equally. They just want to be, and some of them are lepers, and some of them are beautiful goddesses and, priestesses, and some of them are warriors, and some of them are vagrants and, homeless people and addicts. And, every part of this, and it's not some cliche mumbo jumbo new age bullshit. It's not. It's us. Everything we're talking about is about us, So the ghost is not, it's not so much about the ghost that we might encounter that we don't want to see, because it's really just a reflection of that part of us that I feel like that we're no longer going to be unconscious of. We don't have to face it. Maybe we don't face it and we pick it up in the next incarnation. But there's a very, very formidable, uh, you know, unique offering, availability, and potential now in real time. And it's crazy because it seems to require our fearful, scared, uh, human to be as present as all of our other abilities, senses, lives, aspects. And it's like the cherry on top of the dessert, And we thought it was the pit that they forgot to take out at the bottom of the dessert bowl. Uh, it's both. It's both. Ghost is extraordinary because it is the angel and it is the demon. And both, just come from a different perspective. They come from a different place. And you can say masculine, feminine, you can say a lot of different things, dark and light, you can say all kinds of things, but we're embodying this. We talk about embodying, we talk about embodying my galactic aspects, my elemental aspects, my angelic aspects, but we're embodying the ghost. We're embodying every piece of us, the pieces of us that we see in others and like, oh, that's not me, but it is me. We're doing all right. I think I
Certainly
just
are. Moving
yeah.
moving beyond the superficial, aren't we, Todd?
Yeah, we are. We are. We really are. Until the supernatural becomes, you know, not in the same context, but what you see is what you get. And maybe that's because nobody's got it. And that's part of it. You can't explain a ghost. You can accept a ghost, you can embrace a ghost, you can love a ghost, you can, try a different connection coming out of our conditioning with a ghost, but you can't know what happens when you step into that space. The ghost is just the void.
That's
But
right. In every moment.
you can't step into the void unless you step into the void. And it's inevitable. It's inevitable because you can't stand pat and let the grass grow under your feet for very long in this universal energy, especially now.
Exactly. And we thank our listeners and our viewers and all the feedback that keeps coming about this program that we're doing. So if you have some films, books, or other life experiences you'd like to share that we can explore as part of the program, please get in touch with us and we will do what we can.
All right. Sounds good to me. I'll see you same ghost time, same ghost channel next week. And thank you for showing up and thank you for creating this initiative, Liara. Peace out,
Thank you, Todd.
everybody.